The champagne glass slipped from my fingers, hitting the marble floor with a sharp crack that seemed to echo through the entire ballroom. But I barely heard it. All I could focus on was the feeling of Marcus's lips against mine, the way his hand had cupped my face so gently, and the words he'd just whispered. "I've been waiting 10 years for this moment, Sarah. 10 years. My husband's business partner, my friend. And now everything was about to change. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The Whitmore and Associates annual holiday party was always the event of the year. This December evening was no different. The grand ballroom at the Riverside Hotel was transformed into a winter wonderland, complete with crystal chandeliers draped in silver garland and tables adorned with white roses. I'd spent hours getting ready, choosing the emerald green dress that David had complimented me on months ago, the one that made my eyes pop. David, my husband of 12 years, co-founder of the architectural firm that had grown from a two-person operation in our garage to a company employing over 50 people. He was across the room now, deep in conversation with potential clients, his easy laugh carrying over the soft jazz music. That was David, always working, always networking, always pushing forward. "You look stunning tonight," came a familiar voice behind me. I turned to find Marcus Chen approaching with 2 glasses of champagne, his dark suit impeccably tailored as always. Marcus had been David's business partner since the very beginning, back when they were fresh out of college with big dreams and empty pockets. He'd been at our wedding, held our first child when she was born, been there for every major milestone in our lives. "Thank you," I said, accepting the glass. "You clean up pretty well yourself," he smiled, but there was something different in his expression tonight, something I couldn't quite place. "How are you enjoying the party?" "It's beautiful. You and David really outdid yourselves this year." I gestured around the room, though I have to admit, I'm feeling a bit like a decoration myself. David's been so busy with the Henderson project that I've barely seen him all week. Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. "The Henderson project will be there tomorrow. Tonight should be about celebrating what we've built together." There it was, again, that intensity in his voice that seemed to carry more weight than his words suggested. I'd noticed it more frequently over the past few months, the way he'd linger when dropping off documents at the house, how he'd find reasons to check in on me when David was traveling, the way his eyes would find mine across crowded rooms. "Sarah!" David's voice boomed across the space as he approached a group of clients. "Come meet the team from Morrison Development. They're considering us for their new downtown complex." I plastered on my practice smile, the one I'd perfected over years of company events. Of course, the next hour passed in a blur of handshakes, small talk, and business discussion. I played my role perfectly, the supportive wife, asking interesting questions about square footage and zoning regulations, laughing at jokes that weren't particularly funny. But I could feel Marcus watching me from across the room, and every time our eyes met, that strange electric current seemed to pass between us. "Excuse me for just a moment," I said during a lull in conversation. "I need some air." The hotel's terrace was a welcome escape from the crowded ballroom. The December air was crisp and I wrapped my shawl tighter around my shoulders as I stepped outside. The city lights twinkled below like earthbound stars, and for a moment, I could breathe. "I thought I might find you here." I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. "How did you know?" Marcus stepped beside me at the railing, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something woody and warm that I'd grown to associate with safety and comfort over the years. "You always disappear when the business talk gets too intense. You did it at the summer barbecue, at the client dinner in September, at the... You've been watching me that closely." The question slipped out before I could stop it. He was quiet for a long moment, his hands gripping the railing. "Sarah, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Are you happy?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean? With David? With your marriage? Are you happy?" I stared out at the city lights, trying to formulate an answer. The truth was complicated. David was a good man, a good provider, a good father to our daughter Emma, but somewhere along the way we'd become business partners in life, rather than lovers. We managed schedules, discussed logistics, and shared responsibilities. But when was the last time he'd really looked at me? When was the last time we'd talked about something other than Emma's school schedule or the mortgage payment? That's a complicated question, I said finally. It shouldn't be. I turned to face him then, and the intensity in his dark eyes took my breath away. Marcus, what are you? I've been in love with you for 10 years, Sarah. The words hung in the air between us like a confession and a challenge all at once. I felt my heart stop, then start again in double time. What? Since the first day David brought you to the office, you were wearing a yellow sundress and carrying a box of cookies you'd baked for us. You'd flour in your hair, and you laughed when I pointed it out. I knew then that I was in trouble. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what he was telling me. I've watched you for 10 years, Sarah. Watch you support David's dreams, raise Emma, build a life that looks perfect from the outside. But I've also watched the light in your eyes dim a little more each year. I've watched you become smaller, quieter, more invisible. Marcus, you can't. I know I can't. I know you're married to my best friend, my business partner. I know this is wrong on every level, but I also know that you feel it too, this thing between us. I see it in the way you look at me when you think no one's watching. I feel it when our hands brush passing papers. I hear it in the way you say my name. He was right, and that terrified me. Somewhere along the way, Marcus had become more than just David's partner. He'd become the person I looked forward to seeing, the one who remembered how I liked my coffee, who asked about my pottery classes, who seemed to actually see me as more than just a wife and mother. This is insane, I whispered. Maybe, but tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you don't feel anything when I'm near you. Tell me you don't wonder what it would be like if things were different. I couldn't tell him that because it would be a lie. I had wondered. In quiet moments when David was working late again, when I was alone with my thoughts and my growing sense of invisibility, I had imagined what it would be like to be with someone who truly saw me. We can't do this, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. I know, he said, stepping close, but I couldn't go another day without telling you how I feel, without you knowing that someone sees you, really sees you, for the incredible woman you are. The space between us seemed to crackle with electricity. I could hear the music from the ballroom, the distant sound of laughter and conversation. David was in there somewhere, probably wondering where I'd gone, but all I could focus on was Marcus, standing so close I could see the gold flecks in his brown eye. Sarah, he said softly, his hand reaching up to touch my face, and then everything changed. His lips met mine before I could think, before I could protest, before I could remember all the reasons this was wrong. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if he was giving me a chance to pull away, but I didn't. Instead, I found myself leaning into him, my hands finding their way to his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath my palms. When we finally broke apart, I was breathless, staring at him in shock. The champagne glass I'd been holding lay shattered at our feet, the sound of breaking crystal finally registering in my consciousness. Oh God, I whispered, stepping back. What did we just do? Marcus's face was a mixture of triumph and terror. Sarah, are you out there? David's voice carried from the ballroom doorway, and we both froze. I quickly bent down, gathering the larger pieces of broken glass with shaking hands. Coming, I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. Just dropped my glass. Marcus knelt beside me, helping collect the fragment. His fingers brushed mine as we worked, and I felt that same electric shock all over again. Let me handle this, he said quietly. Go back inside. I'll clean up and follow in a few minutes. I nodded, not trusting my voice. As I walked back toward the ballroom, I caught my reflection in the glass doors. My lipstick was smudged, my cheeks flushed. I quickly wiped my mouth with my shawl and pinched my cheeks, hoping the cold air would explain away the color. David was waiting just inside the doorway, his brow furrowed with concern. Everything okay? You look upset. Just clumsy, I managed, forcing a laugh. Dropped my glass on the terrace. Marcus is cleaning it up. That's our Marcus, always looking out for everyone. David's arm slipped around my waist, and I had to resist the urge to flinch. The Morrison team wants to continue our conversation over dinner next week. This could be the biggest contract we've ever landed. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. I nodded, trying to focus on his words, but all I could think about was the way Marcus's lips had felt against mine, the way he'd held my face so tenderly, the way he'd looked at me like I was the only person in the world who mattered. The rest of the evening passed in a haze. I smiled and nodded at the right moments, made appropriate small talk, played the perfect wife, but I was hyper-aware of Marcus's every movement across the room. When he returned from the terrace, his eyes found mine immediately, and the intensity in his gaze made my stomach flutter. When he laughed at something a client said, I found myself studying the way his face lit up. When he rolled up his sleeves during an animated discussion about building materials, I couldn't stop staring at his forearms. This was dangerous. This was wrong. This was going to destroy everything. Ready to head home? David asked as the evening wound down. I'm exhausted, and I've got an early meeting with the Patterson account tomorrow. Of course, I said, grateful for the escape. As we made our rounds, saying goodbye, Marcus approached us with two other partners. Great party tonight, he said, his voice perfectly normal, betraying nothing of what had happened between us. Sarah, you looked beautiful as always. Thank you, I replied, proud of how steady my voice sounded. See you Monday, partner, David said, clapping Marcus on the shoulder. We'll need to follow up on those Morrison leads first thing. Absolutely, Marcus replied, but his eyes were on me. Have a good weekend. The drive home was quiet. David scrolled through emails on his phone while I stared out the window, replaying every moment of the kiss. I should feel guilty, I knew. I should be drowning in shame and regret. Instead, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. You're quiet tonight, David observed as we pulled into our driveway. Just tired, I said. It was a long evening, but successful. I think we really impressed the Morrison people. If we land this contract, we'll be able to expand the Phoenix office, maybe even open something in Denver. More expansion, more travel, more nights alone while he chased the next big deal. I wondered if he'd even notice if I wasn't here when he got back from his business trips. Emma was already asleep when we got home. Our 16-year-old daughter sprawled across her bed with textbooks still open around her. I gently closed her chemistry book and pulled a blanket over her shoulders, brushing her dark hair away from her face. She looked so much like David when she slept, the same strong jawline, the same thick eyelashes. Mom? She mumbled without opening her eyes. Just checking on you, sweetheart. Go back to sleep. How was the party? Fine. Boring adult stuff. She smiled sleepily. Did you and Dad dance? The question caught me off guard. When was the last time David and I had danced? At our wedding, at Emma's friend's bat mitzvah 2 years ago. I couldn't remember. No, honey. Daddy was too busy with work. He's always busy with work, she said, and there was something in her voice that made my chest tighten. Even Emma had noticed the growing distance between her parents. I kissed her forehead and headed to my own bedroom, where David was already in his pajamas, scrolling through his tablet. The Henderson project is behind schedule, he said without looking up. I'm going to have to fly out to Seattle this week, probably leave Tuesday. How long will you be gone? 4, maybe 5 days. Marcus will handle things here. He glanced up at me then. That reminds me. He mentioned wanting to stop by this weekend to go over the Morrison proposal. I told him that was fine. My heart stopped. He's coming here, this weekend, Saturday afternoon. We need to get this proposal perfect before Monday's follow-up meeting. David set down his tablet and looked at me with concern. Is that a problem? You like Marcus? I did like Marcus. That was the problem. No, it's fine. I'll make sure to stay out of your way. You don't have to disappear, Sarah. This is your house too. Besides, Marcus always asks about you. I think he enjoys your company. If only he knew how much Marcus enjoyed my company. I'll probably take Emma shopping or something. David nodded, already turning back to his tablet. Good idea. Give us space to work. I went through my nighttime routine on autopilot, removing my makeup, brushing my teeth, changing into pajamas. But as I lay in bed listening to David's steady breathing, sleep eluded me. All I could think about was Marcus, about the way he'd looked at me when he said he'd been waiting 10 years, about the way his kiss had made me feel wanted and desired in a way I'd forgotten was possible. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text message from an unknown number. I hope you don't regret what happened tonight. I don't. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. How had he gotten my number? When had he programmed it into his phone? The questions swirled through my mind, but one thing was clear. This wasn't over. Whatever had started between us on that terrace was just the beginning. I deleted the message and set my phone aside, but I couldn't delete the memory of his kiss or the way it had made me feel. Saturday couldn't come fast enough, and that terrified me more than anything else. Saturday morning arrived with an unseasonable warmth for December, as if the weather itself was conspiring to make everything more complicated. I'd barely slept, tossing and turning while David snored peacefully beside me, completely oblivious to the storm brewing in his own home. Emma was at the kitchen table when I came downstairs, still in my robe, her calculus homework spread across the surface like a puzzle she couldn't solve. Need help? I asked, grateful for the distraction. Unless you suddenly became a math genius overnight. Probably not, she said with a frustrated sigh. I don't understand why I need to learn derivatives when I want to study marine biology. Math is the language of science, sweetheart. Even ocean currents follow mathematical patterns. She looked up at me with surprise. That's actually kind of cool when you put it that way. I ruffled her hair, remembering when she was little and I was the one with all the answers. Now she was 16, nearly as tall as me, with her father's determination and what I hoped was some of my curiosity about the world. Mom, are you and Dad okay? She asked suddenly, her pencil hovering over her notebook. The question hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean? You guys barely talk anymore, and when you do, it's about schedules or bills or his work stuff. You used to laugh together. You used to. She trailed off, shrugging. Used to what? I don't know. Be happy, I guess. Now it feels like you're just existing in the same house. Out of the mouths of babes. My 16-year-old daughter had articulated what I'd been struggling to admit to myself for months. David and I weren't really married anymore. We were roommates who shared a mortgage and a child. Relationships go through phases. Your dad's been under a lot of pressure with the business. It's been like this for 2 years, Mom. Maybe longer. She set down her pencil and looked at me with eyes that seemed far too old for her face. I'm not a little kid anymore. I can see that you're not happy. Before I could respond, David's voice echoed from upstairs. Sarah, have you seen my blue tie, the one with the small pattern? In your closet, left side. I called back, then turned to Emma. We'll talk about this later, okay? She nodded, but I could see the concern in her expression. How long had she been watching us? Analyzing our marriage with the keen observation skills of a teenager. How much had we failed to hide? David appeared in the kitchen 20 minutes later, dressed for work despite it being Saturday. I'm heading to the office for a few hours before Marcus comes over. Want to review the Morrison files one more time. It's Saturday, I pointed out. Big contracts don't take weekends off, he replied, kissing my forehead absently. Marcus should be here around 2. We'll probably work until dinner time. My stomach clenched. 6 hours. Marcus would be in my house for 6 hours while David pored over blueprints and budget projections, completely unaware that his business partner had kissed his wife just 48 hours ago. Emma and I were thinking of going shopping, I said quickly. Maybe catch a movie. Sounds good. Give us space to concentrate. He grabbed his keys and briefcase. Love you. Love you too, I replied automatically, the words feeling hollow in my mouth. After he left, Emma looked at me with raised eyebrows. Shopping? Since when do you voluntarily subject yourself to the mall on a Saturday? Since today, come on, get dressed. We'll make a day of it. But even as I said it, I knew I was running away. Running from Marcus, from the feelings that had been consuming me since Thursday night, from the growing certainty that my marriage was already over and had been for longer than I wanted to admit. Emma disappeared upstairs to get ready, and I found myself staring at my phone. Marcus's deleted text message still burned into my memory. I wondered if he would text again, if he was thinking about me the way I'd been thinking about him. Read, Emma announced, bounding down the stairs in jeans and her favorite sweater. Where are we starting? Please tell me not the department store. I'd rather do anything else. How about that new bookstore downtown? Then lunch at that cafe you like? Her face lit up. Really? You hate bookstore. You always say they're overpriced. She was right. I did usually avoid bookstores, preferring to order online or use the library, but today I needed to be somewhere public, somewhere safe, somewhere that wasn't here when Marcus arrived. The bookstore was exactly what I expected: crowded, expensive, and filled with the kind of literary pretension that usually made me roll my eye. But watching Emma browse the science section with genuine excitement, pulling books about ocean conservation and marine ecosystems from the shelves, reminded me of why I'd fallen in love with learning in the first place. Look at this one, she said, showing me a thick volume about coral reef restoration. Did you know that some corals can live for over 1,000 years, and that they're basically animals, not plants? I did not know that, I admitted, smiling at her enthusiasm. They're like underwater cities, with different species living together in this incredibly complex ecosystem. It's amazing. Watching her talk about something she was passionate about, seeing the light in her eyes, made me realize how long it had been since I'd felt that kind of excitement about anything. When did I stop having passions of my own? When had I become just an extension of David's ambitions, a supporting character in his story? You should study marine biology, I said. Seriously, if that's what lights you up, go for it. Dad thinks I should do something more practical, business or engineering. Your dad isn't the one who has to live your life, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. You get to choose your own path. Emma, don't let anyone else's expectations limit what you think is possible. She looked at me with wonder. Thanks, Mom. I needed to hear that. We spent the next hour browsing, Emma collecting an armload of books while I found myself drawn to the memoir section, stories of women who'd reinvented themselves, who'd found the courage to start over, who'd chosen themselves even when it meant disappointing others. At lunch, Emma was unusually quiet, picking at her salad while I tried to make conversation about her upcoming finals, her plans for winter break, anything except the growing dread in my stomach as the clock approached 2 o'clock. Mom, can I ask you something? She said, finally. Of course, if you could do anything, be anything, what would it be? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? I mean, if you weren't married to Dad, if you didn't have to worry about money or what other people thought, what would you want to do with your life? I stared at her, this insightful young woman, who somehow understood that I'd lost myself somewhere along the way. I used to want to be a photographer, I said slowly. Travel photography, specifically. I wanted to document different cultures, capture moments that told stories. What happened to that dream? Life happened. I met your dad. We got married. Had you? Photography doesn't exactly pay the bills, but Dad makes plenty of money now. You could go back to it. Could I? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. It's been so long, and I'm not sure I'd be any good at it anymore. The only way to find out is to try, she said, echoing my words from earlier. Don't let anyone else's expectations limit what you think is possible. I laughed despite myself, using my own advice against me. Learned from the. By the time we headed home, it was nearly 5 o'clock. I'd successfully avoided being there when Marcus arrived, but now I had to face the consequences of that avoidance. What had David thought when I wasn't there to offer coffee or snacks? What had Marcus? David's car was in the driveway alongside Marcus's sleek black sedan. Through the living room window I could see them hunched over David's laptop, papers scattered across the coffee table. They looked like what they were, successful business partners collaborating on their next big venture. If only it were that simple. They're still working, Emma observed. Think they'll be done soon? Your dad likes to be thorough, I said, though part of me hoped they'd work until midnight. Anything to delay the inevitable moment when I'd have to look Marcus in the eye and pretend nothing had changed. We entered through the kitchen, and I could hear their voices from the living room, David's animated discussion of square footage and zoning requirements, Marcus's deeper voice asking thoughtful questions, normal business conversation, nothing to suggest that one of them had kissed the other's wife just 2 days ago. Sarah? That you? David called out. Yes, we're back, I replied, busying myself with putting away Emma's new books. Perfect timing. We just finished the Morrison proposal. Marcus, stay for dinner. Sarah makes the best lasagna in the city. My hands froze on the bookshelf. Dinner, with Marcus, sitting across from him at my own dining room table. making small talk while David remained oblivious to the tension crackling between us. I don't want to impose, Marcus said, but I could hear something in his voice. Hope? Anticipation? Nonsense, David insisted. Besides, Sarah loves having company, don't you, honey? What could I say? That I'd rather eat glass than sit through dinner pretending everything was normal. That having Marcus in my house was torture, that every time he looked at me I remembered the feeling of his lips against mine. Of course, I managed. I'll get started on dinner. Emma headed upstairs to her room, leaving me alone in the kitchen with my racing thoughts. I pulled ingredients from the refrigerator mechanically: ground beef, ricotta cheese, pasta sheets. The familiar routine of cooking should have been soothing, but my hands were shaking as I layered the ingredients. Need any help? I spun around to find Marcus standing in the kitchen doorway, his sleeves rolled up, his tie loosened. He looked tired but determined, and when our eyes met, I felt that same electric shock I'd experienced on the terrace. I'm fine, I said quickly, turning back to the counter. Sarah. His voice was soft, urgent. We need to talk. There's nothing to talk about, I said without turning around. What happened Thursday night was a mistake. Was it? He stepped closer, and I could feel the warmth of his body even though he wasn't touching me. Because it didn't feel like a mistake, it felt like the most honest moment I've had in 10 years. Marcus, please. I gripped the edge of the counter, fighting the urge to turn around, to look at him, to fall into those dark eyes that saw too much. My husband is in the next room. My daughter is upstairs. This can't happen. I know the timing is terrible. I know this complicates everything. But Sarah, I can't pretend I don't love you anymore. I can't watch you disappear a little more each day and do nothing about it. Disappear. I turned to face him then, anger flaring in my chest. What's that supposed to mean? When was the last time David really looked at you? When was the last time he asked about your dreams, your fears, what you wanted out of life? When was the last time he made you feel like you mattered for something other than managing his schedule and raising his child? The words hit like physical blows because they were true. Every single accusation was accurate, and that made them hurt even more. You don't know anything about my marriage, I said, but the protest sounded weak even to my own ears. I know that you used to light up when you talked about photography. I know that you wanted to travel, to see the world through your lens. I know that you had dreams before you became Miss David Whitmore. How do you? Because I pay attention, Sarah. I notice when you get excited about something. I notice when you're sad, when you're frustrated, when you're pretending to be fine when you're not. I've been watching you for 10 years, and I see you in ways that David doesn't even try to anymore. Tears were threatening now, and I blinked them back furiously. This isn't fair. You're right. It's not fair. It's not fair that I fell in love with my best friend's wife. It's not fair that you're trapped in a marriage that's suffocating you. It's not fair that we found each other 10 years too late. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. But what's really not fair is pretending that what we feel for each other doesn't exist. Even if you're right, I whispered. What are you suggesting? That I leave my husband for his business partner? That I destroy Emma's family? That I blow up everyone's life for something that might not even work out? I'm suggesting that you deserve to be happy, that you deserve to be with someone who sees you, who values you, who loves you for who you are instead of what you can do for them. And you think you're that person? I know I am. His hand reached up to touch my face, just like he had on the terrace, and this time I didn't pull away. I love your laugh, the real one, not the polite one you use at parties. I love how you get completely absorbed when you're reading, how you bite your lip when you're concentrating. I love that you still cry at commercials with puppies and that you sing off-key in the car when you think no one's listening. How do you know all of this? Because I've been paying attention for 10 years, Sarah. Because while David was building his empire, I was falling in love with his wife. The kitchen felt too small, the air too thin. Everything he was saying was true, and that terrified me more than anything else. He did see me in ways that David never had. He did pay attention to the small details that made me who I was, and the way he was looking at me now, like I was the most important person in his world, made me feel alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. This is crazy, I breathed. Maybe, but tell me you don't feel it too. Tell me that when I kissed you, you didn't feel something you haven't felt in years. I couldn't tell him that, because it would be a lie. The kiss had awakened something in me that I'd thought was dead: desire, passion, the feeling of being truly wanted by someone who saw all of me. Sarah, he started to move closer, but the sound of footsteps in the hallway made us both freeze. How's dinner coming along? David appeared in the doorway, completely oblivious to the tension in the room. Marcus, I was just telling Emma about the Morrison project. She's interested in the environmental impact assessment. That's great, Marcus said, his voice perfectly normal despite the emotional storm that had just been raging between us. Environmental consciousness is crucial in modern architecture. I turned back to the lasagna, grateful for something to do with my hand. Dinner will be ready in about 20 minutes, I managed. Perfect. I'll open some wine. David disappeared into the dining room, leaving Marcus and me alone again. We're not done with this conversation, Marcus said quietly. Yes, we are, I replied, but even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. This thing between us wasn't going away just because I wanted it to. If anything, it was getting stronger. Dinner was torture. David dominated the conversation with talk of expansion plans and market projections, while Marcus and I sat across from each other, trying to act normal while the air between us crackled with unresolved tension. Emma, bless her, was fascinated by Marcus's stories about sustainable building practices, asking intelligent questions that kept the conversation flowing. You should consider architecture, Marcus told her. It combines environmental science with creative problem solving. I never thought about it that way, Emma said, her eyes lighting up. Could you design buildings that actually help ocean conservation? Absolutely. Waterfront developments, marine research facilities, floating structures that work with natural currents instead of against them. Watching Marcus engage with my daughter, seeing the genuine interest he showed in her dreams and ideas, made my chest tight with emotion. This was what it looked like when someone truly listened, when they valued another person's thoughts and aspirations. When was the last time David had asked Emma about her interests in anything other than her grades? That sounds amazing, Emma said. Maybe I could do a job shadow at your firm sometime. I'd be honored to have you, Marcus replied, his eyes flicking to mine across the table. Your mom could come too. I'd love to show her around, explain what we do. The invitation hung in the air, loaded with meaning that only Marcus and I could understand. David nodded approvingly, completely missing the undercurrent. Great idea. Sarah's always been curious about the business, haven't you, honey? Sure, I said weakly, wondering how I'd gotten myself into this situation. After dinner, David insisted on breaking out his expensive scotch, settling into the living room for what he called proper conversation. Emma excused herself to work on homework, leaving the three of us in an increasingly uncomfortable triangle of small talk and business discussion. I should probably head home, Marcus said around 9 o'clock. Thank you for dinner, Sarah. It was delicious. I'll walk you out, David said. We can finish discussing the Henderson timeline. They headed toward the front door, leaving me to clear the dessert plates and try to process everything that had happened. The conversation in the kitchen kept replaying in my mind. Marcus's confession, his words about David not seeing me anymore, the way he'd looked at me like I was worth seeing. I was loading the dishwasher when I heard David come back inside, his footsteps heading upstairs. A moment later my phone buzzed with a text from that same unknown number. I meant every word I said tonight. The offer to show you the office stands, with or without Emma. I want to spend time with you, Sarah, real time, where we can talk about everything we can't say in front of Dave. Think about it. My hands were shaking as I read the message. He was asking me to make a choice, to take a concrete step toward whatever this was between us. Meeting him at his office would be crossing a line, and we both knew it. I stared at the phone for a long time, then typed back, I can't. But even as I sent the message, I knew I was lying to both of us. Because despite everything I'd said about this being wrong, about protecting my family, about the impossibility of the situation, I wanted to see him. I wanted to have that conversation without David's presence casting a shadow over everything. I wanted to explore these feelings that had been dormant for so long. Another text appeared. I'll be at the office tomorrow afternoon, around 2 p.m. If you change your mind, you know where to find me. No pressure, Sarah. But please don't let fear make this decision for you. I deleted both messages and put my phone away, but I couldn't delete the longing in my chest or the growing certainty that my marriage was already over. The question wasn't whether I loved David. I did, Or at least I loved the memory of who we used to be together. The question was whether I loved myself enough to admit that we'd both changed, that we wanted different things now, that staying together out of obligation wasn't fair to either of us. That night, as I lay in bed listening to David's steady breathing, I thought about Emma's question from earlier. If you could do anything, be anything, what would it be? The answer wasn't just about photography anymore. It was about being seen, being valued, being loved for who I was rather than what I could provide. Marcus saw me. He'd been seeing me for 10 years, noticing details that my own husband had stopped paying attention to long ago. And maybe that made me selfish. Maybe it made me weak. But for the first time in years, I felt like I mattered to someone. Sunday morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. David was already up and dressed when I came downstairs, his laptop open on the kitchen table. "Working again?" I asked. "The Henderson project won't manage itself," he replied without looking up. "I'll probably be here most of the day. Maybe you and Emma could go out, give me some quiet, to concentrate." It was the perfect excuse. Emma was spending the day at her friend Jessica's house, working on a group project. I could easily claim to be running errands, maybe visiting my sister. Anything to explain being gone for a few hours. "Actually," I said carefully, "I was thinking of driving downtown, maybe visit some galleries, do some window shopping." "Sounds good, take your time." He still hadn't looked up from his screen. This was my life. A husband so absorbed in his work that he didn't even notice his wife might be planning to meet another man. A husband who trusted me completely because it had never occurred to him that I might have needs. He wasn't meeting. At 1:30 I found myself sitting in my car outside the Whitmore and Associates building, my hands gripping the steering wheel. I'd driven here almost on autopilot, not making a conscious decision until this very moment. The building was mostly empty on Sunday, just a few cars in the parking garage, the security guard at the front desk, reading a newspaper. I could still leave. I could drive home, pretend this moment had never happened, go back to my safe, predictable, slowly suffocating life. Or I could walk through those glass doors and see what happened when Marcus and I were finally alone, with no interruptions, no pretenses, no David to consider. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "Forgot to mention, I'll be working late tomorrow too. The Henderson client wants changes to the specs. Hope you don't mind." I stared at the message, feeling something shift inside me. He'd forgotten to mention, just like he'd forgotten to dance with me at the party, forgotten to ask about my day, forgotten that I existed except as a supporting character in his story. I got out of the car. The security guard barely looked up as I signed in, mentioning that I was here to see Marcus. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt endless, giving me too much time to think, to second guess, to change my mind. But when the doors opened and I saw Marcus standing in the hallway, clearly watching for me, all my doubts evaporated. "You came," he said, and the relief in his voice was unmistakable. "I'm still not sure why," I admitted. "Because you're brave," he said. "Because you're tired of being invisible. Because you deserve more than what you're settling for." He led me to his office, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It was neat, organized, with personal touches that spoke to the man I'd come to know, a small sculpture from his travels to Japan, photographs of buildings he'd designed, a bookshelf filled with architecture magazines and novels. "It's beautiful," I said, moving to the window. "The view's not bad either," he replied, but when I looked back at him, he was watching me, not the cityscape. "Marcus," I started, but he shook his head. "Before you say anything, let me show you something." He pulled out a portfolio from his desk, opening it to reveal a series of architectural drawings. "These are preliminary sketches for a new project, a marine research facility." I looked closer, recognizing the flowing lines, the way the building seemed to rise from the water like a natural formation. "It's incredible. I designed it for Emma," he said quietly. "Well, for students like Emma, young scientists who want to study ocean conservation. I've been working on it for months, trying to figure out how to make it economically viable." The gesture took my breath away. "You did this for Emma?" I did it because I pay attention to the people I care about. I did it because I see how her eyes light up when she talks about marine biology, and I wanted to create a space where that passion could flourish. Tears were threatening again. David doesn't even know what she wants to study. David doesn't pay attention to anything that isn't directly related to his next contract. Marcus said gently. That's not necessarily his fault. Some people get so focused on providing that they forget to connect. But Sarah, you and Emma deserve someone who sees you, who values your dreams as much as his own. Is that what you're offering? To be that person? I'm offering to try. I'm offering to love you the way you deserve to be loved. Completely, attentively, with respect for who you are and who you want to become. The words hung between us, a promise and a challenge. I thought about Emma's question again, about what I would do if I could do anything. The answer was suddenly crystal clear. I want to take photographs again, I said. Real photographs, not just family snapshots. I want to travel, to see things that matter, to document stories worth telling. Then do it, he said simply. I'll support you. We'll figure out the logistics, the finances, everything. But don't give up on your dreams because they're inconvenient for someone else. And what about Emma? What about David? What about the business? Emma is 6. She's smart, resilient, and she deserves to see her mother living authentically, instead of just surviving. As for David, Marcus paused, running a hand through his hair. David is my friend, and this will hurt him. But Sarah, he's already lost you. He just doesn't know it yet. You've been gone for months, maybe years, just going through the motions. He was right, and I knew it. The woman David had married, the one who'd been content to be a supporting character in his story, had been disappearing gradually. What remained was someone I barely recognized, dutiful, resentful, invisible. I'm scared, I whispered. I know, so am I, but I'm more scared of living the rest of my life wondering what could have been if we'd been brave enough to try. He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the sincerity in his eyes, the vulnerability he was showing me. I love you, Sarah. Not the version of you that's convenient or safe, but all of you. The dreamer, the photographer, the woman who cries at puppy commercials and sings off-key in the car. I love your curiosity, your kindness, your strength. I love who you are and who you're becoming. I love you too, I said, the words falling from my lips before I could stop them. God help me. I love you too. This time, when he kissed me, there was no hesitation, no guilt, no voice in my head telling me this was wrong. There was only Marcus, only the feeling of being truly seen and valued, and loved for exactly who I was. When we finally broke apart, I knew there was no going back. Whatever came next, the difficult conversations, the messy logistics of ending one life and starting another, the pain we'd inevitably cause, I was choosing myself for the first time in years. What happens now? I asked. Now we figure it out together, he said, one step at a time. But Sarah, whatever we do it honestly. No more secrets, no more pretending. If we're going to do this, we do it right. I nodded, thinking about the conversation I'd have to have with David, with Emma, with myself. It wouldn't be easy. There would be hurt feelings, complicated logistics, judgments from people who thought I should have tried harder to make my marriage work. But for the first time in years, I felt alive. I felt seen. I felt like the protagonist of my own story instead of a supporting character in someone else's. Okay, I said, surprising myself with how certain I sounded. Let's figure it out together. As I drove home that evening, I thought about the photography equipment gathering dust in our closet, about the travel magazines I'd stopped buying because they made me too sad, about all the dreams I'd put aside in the name of being practical, responsible, selfless. Tomorrow would bring difficult conversations and painful decisions, but tonight, for the first time in years, I fell asleep, thinking about the future instead of just surviving the present. And that, I realized, was worth whatever came next. Looking for more. We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest upload.